Hi poetry lovers, welcome to my channel Bella Poetry Presents. My name is Bella and I love beautiful poetry. In our first segment of the third series, the best Russian poets of the Silver Age, we will discuss, first of all in chronological order, a wonderful Russian poem, Alexander Blok. Alexander Blok, who was Russian poet and playwright, is often compared to Pushkin because of his leading role among the poets of the Silver Age and his enormous influence on the subsequent poets. Many leading poets of the Silver Age, such as Maria Tsvetaeva, Anna Akhmatova, Boris Pasternak, and others wrote poetic tributes to Alexander Blok. The Silver Age of Russian literature represents a rather short period in history from 1890 to 1921, a time of tremendous turmoil, war, revolution, hunger, poverty. In this turbulent time, however, Russian poetry flourished, and bold experiments in all forms of art took place. The son of the law professor and a writer, Alexander Blok was born in St. Petersburg on November 28, 1880. He lived there actually all his life. His mother was a literary translator, critic, author of children's book, and a famous biographer of Mikhail Lermontov, who was another very famous poet, Russian poet. Blok's parents divorced when he was 9 years old, and his mother remarried a Polish-born guards officer. Blok spent his childhood with his maternal grandfather in Petersburg and a village Akhmatova near Moscow. The grandfather's name was Beketov. He was a botanist and a rector of Petersburg University. Blok began writing poetry from a very early age, and he created with his brother handwritten literary journals also in his teens. The atmosphere in the house was wonderful. It was charged with creative energy. The children of the noble families came and visited, including the young Blok. They kept diaries, they wrote poetry, and staged theatrical performances. Alexander Blok also had an interest in theater and unfulfilled desire to act that probably was inspired or influenced by his future wife, Lyubov Mendeleev, who was the daughter of a great chemist, Dmitry Mendeleev. Lyubov would go on to become a professional actress and a historian of Russian ballet. Blok's first book of poetry, titled Verses About a Beautiful Lady, is dedicated to his wife, future wife, Lyubov Mendeleeva. In 1903, the couple got married, but their marriage was kind of very strange. Alexander Blok elevated Lyubov on a pedestal. He adored her, he felt that she is above all women, and he deprived her of physical love. He thought that they don't need physical love in this relationship, but that didn't prevent him from having numerous affairs with other women. Lyubov Mendeleeva naturally was very, very upset, and she was suffering because she loved Alexander Blok a lot, and she craved the physical intimacy, which he totally deprived her of. And this abstinence was a horrible burden for the young woman. So she began having affairs with other people, poets and actors. Lyubov honestly wrote to her husband about all their affairs, and every time she would finish her confession with the words, "But I only love you." When she became pregnant by the artist under the pen name Dagobert, Blok received this news very favorably. He couldn't have his own children because of transferred syphilis. But unfortunately, the child died shortly after the birth. Mendeleva and Blok lived together all their lives. Even though Blok, as I said before, had many, many affairs with many beautiful women. Lyubov Mendeleva later wrote a volume of memoirs entitled Fact and Fiction about Blok and myself. At the end of his life, finally, Blok realized that there is only one woman for him, Lyubov. He called her beautiful at every stage of her life. Lyubov, that actually means in Russian love, will outlive her husband by 18 years. After his death, she will not marry again, and her last words were Sasha. Sasha is actually the abbreviation of the name Alexander. Lyubov Dmitria Mendeleva went down in history as not only the daughter of a famous chemist, Dmitry Mendeleev, but also as the wife of one of the greatest poets in Russian history. But let's go back to Blok's education. He was educated at the Vidensky Gymnasium in St. Petersburg. Then he enrolled in law faculty of St. Petersburg University. But shortly after, he transferred to the history and philosophy department, where he completed his studies in Slavic and Russian languages. He began writing very early at the age of 17, and in 1903, the beginning of 1903, some of his poems were published in the D.A. Smerezhovsky magazine, The New Way. He was a supporter of Russian Revolution. He joined both the Russian Army and the Communist Party in 1916 and served in the civil defense near a town called Pinsk, followed by a 2-year stint on the Provisional Government's Commission interrogating the Tsarist ministers. The authorities used Blok's name as a propaganda tool. Russian poets were very influential, which after the Bolsheviks came to power and trampled on free speech, he perceived as a personal tragedy. He realized that actually he was used not for good purposes, his name and his poetry. Blok believed that the Bolsheviks had deprived him of the inner freedom necessary for creativity. And when a poet doesn't write, he dies, for he has no reason to live, Blok postulated. He suffered the consequences of the revolution so keenly that it almost crushed his ability to write. For him, the melody of revolution had faded away, and he wrote, "All sounds have stopped. Can you not hear that there are no sounds?" In 1919, he was arrested and nearly executed for alleged counter-revolutionary activities. During the last 3 years of his life, he supported himself and his family by translating for the publishing house Всемирная литература, which in Russian means the world literature. He served as the chairman of the Bolshoi Theater and led the Petrograd chapter of the All-Russian Union of Poets. In his early work, Blok often treated themes of spirituality, spiritual beauty, and mysticism, but in his later poems, he explored the nature of political revolution. His collections of poetry includes verses about the Lady Beautiful, published in 1903-1904, The City, published in 1906, The Mask of Snow, published in 1907. He is also a subject of a few biographies, including Nina Berberova's Alexander Blok, Alive, published in 1996, Kornei Chukovsky, Alexander Blok as a Man and a Poet, published in 1982, and the two-volume The Life of Alexander Blok by Avril Pyman, published in 1979 and 1980, respectively. One of his most controversial works was a long poem called The 12. It was published the year after the October Revolution in 1918. The work was a response to the rise of the Bolshevik government, and unfortunately it turned many of Blok's supporters and admirers against him. It cost him many friendships, as he was seen to be bowing down to the harsh and criminal acts of unelected regime. Blok's heavy workload for various state institutions and his increasing disillusion with the Russian Revolution left him spiritually and physically drained. He suffered from asthma, he suffered from heart trouble, as well as chronic depression that prevented him from writing. By 1921, Blok did not write any poetry for 3 whole years. Blok finally died of a heart failure brought by malnutrition in 1921. He was 41 years old. He was buried in the Smolensk cemetery. The St. Petersburg apartment on the bank of Prashka River, where he lived with his family for the last 8 years of his life, is open to the public as the Alexander Blok Apartment Museum. So today we will read a few of his poems that I've chosen. It's very difficult to translate Russian poetry because Russian language is very, very rich, but I try to do my best. So I'll read it first in Russian and then in English. Ночь, улица, фонарь, аптека, бессмысленный и тусклый свет. Живи еще хоть четверть века, все будет так, исхода нет. Умрешь, начнешь опять сначала, и повторится все, как сталь. Ночь, ледяная рябь канала, аптека, улица, фонарь. And in English. Night street, lamp, drugstore, a dull and meaningless light. Go on and live another quarter century. Nothing will change. There is no way out in sight. You'll die, start from the beginning, and all will repeat just like before. Night, icy ripples on a canal, drugstore, street, lamp. Beautiful poem. And now we're going to read his second poem. It's called They're Better or Worse Than Me. Again, first in Russian. Есть лучше и хуже меня, и много людей и богов, и в каждом метании огня, и в каждом печаль облаков, и каждый другого зажжет и снова потушит костер, и каждый печально вздохнет, взглянувшим другому во взор. Да, буду я царь над собой, со мною да будет мой гнев, чтоб видеть над бездной глухой черты ослепительных дев. Я сам свою жизнь сотворю, я сам свою жизнь погублю, я буду смотреть на зарю лишь с теми, кого полюблю. And in English. They're better or worse than me, people or gods, and there may be in everyone the fire sprouts, in everyone the grief of clouds, and everyone will burn the other one, then extinguish the fire, and everyone will sadly sigh while looking into each other's eye. Let it be the Tsar over myself, let it be with me all my anger, for then I'll see above the chaos such a dazzling and shining girl's features. I'll create my life only by myself. I'll ruin by myself my life. I look at a dawn and together with those whom I fall into love, whom I fall into love. And the translation was done by Ludmila Purgina. The poem was written in September 1906. And the last poem is called «О, я хочу безумно жить». I yearn to live the life of meaning. О, я хочу безумно жить, все сущее увековечить, безличное вочеловечить, несбывшееся воплотить. Пусть души жизни сон тяжелый, пусть задыхаюсь в этом сне, быть может, юноша веселый в грядущем скажет обо мне: простим угрюмство, разве это сокрытый двигатель его? Он весь дитя добра и света, он весь свободы торжество. I yearn to live a life of meaning, make everything immortalized, make all the formal humanized, bring non-existent into being. This dream will choke me, I'll collapse, this dream will rob me of my breath, but then a cheery youth perhaps might speak of me after my death. Forgive his gloom, take it in stride. Was that the engine that would lead him, a child of goodness and of light, his all a testament to freedom? And with this poem we come to the end of this segment that talks about the life and the poetry of Alexander Blok. In our second segment of our third series, The Great Poets of the Silver Age, we will discuss a wonderful, interesting, and also tragic life of a Russian poetess of the Silver Age, Anna Akhmatova. Please join us. Thank you so much for visiting Bella Poetry Presents. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye.